God be praised. First words my father said when I was born. So they named me God be praised, or Judas. I came from a fine Jewish family. We celebrated Moses and Abraham and Isaac and all the prophets. We were taught to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our might, to the very best of our ability. And we did that. We tried to be a good part of God's family. Oh, we would sin, we would repent, we would sin again. But we always tried to be a good part of God's family. The claw of Rome had gripped our country 150 years before I was even born. 150 years our people were in captivity. A lot of them had lost a lot of hope. Many, but not all. Some remembered the promises that God had made. Promises to Abraham to bless his people. Promises to the slaves to have Moses lead them to a new land. Promises to be our God if we would be his people. Not everyone forgot. There was one family in particular, the Maccabees. They were the most famous of the Jewish resistance movement. Wow. They came up with a plan. It was risky. The odds were overwhelming that they wouldn't make it. But they led a revolt against the most hated Roman leader at that time. And do you know they won? They actually ousted him out of Jerusalem. They were able to take back the temple and they cleansed it. We still celebrate that day. We call it Hanukkah. But the revolt didn't last. By the time I was born, Rome had a firm grip on our country again. Oh, how we hated them. They bled us dry with their taxes. They tried to take over every part of our lives. And I wondered, I was puzzled. How could God let this happen to his people? We would read the scriptures. God would send his Messiah to save us. And I wondered, how will that happen? When will that happen? We were so weak. And Rome was so strong. I prayed every night that God would send his Messiah to free us from those accursed Romans. When I was a little boy, there was a man by the name of Judas of Galilee, who gathered a number of people of the like mind to help us overthrow the Romans. It was time we did something. They called themselves zealots, and they started a revolt. It didn't work out well. Matter of fact, they captured 2,000 of them. And do you know what the Romans did? They crucified every single one of them. All of them hung from crosses on the roads of Judea for all of us to see. 2,000 of them. As a reminder of the strength of Rome and how weak and futile it is to oppose them. I will never forget those people. And when I became a young man, I became a zealot. I'm not proud of all the things I did in my life at that time. They named me Iscariot, which means dagger, if that's any indication. But you have to understand, we had a purpose. We were true believers. There was a cause that was worth dying for. The only thing is, every time we would act and we would be successful, it was nothing but a disturbance, a near annoyance to Rome. We weren't making any headway. It seemed like nothing we were doing was having any real lasting effect. What we really needed, more than anything, was a leader. Someone who could put us in that direction. For a while we thought that would be John the Baptist, but he had no interest at all. And then we heard about a man named Jesus of Nazareth, and the crowd seemed to rave about him, to talk about his miraculous works. So I sought him out. I went to hear him teach. I have to tell you, that was the most amazing day of my life. As soon as he started talking, it was like a flame erupted inside of me, this flame of hope. His words were like spears and arrows that went right into my very soul. The way the crowd was responding to them, I thought, this could be our leader. This could be the one that will help us to overthrow Rome. And after it was done, the most incredible thing happened. Jesus came up to me and asked me to be one of his inner circle of friends. I couldn't believe it. He came up to me. I was looking for him, but he made it seem like he was seeking me out, and he wouldn't rest until he found me. I'm not special. Jesus had a way of making everyone feel that way, and he wouldn't rest until he found them. I met the others in our group. There were 12 of us in all. They made me the treasurer. Those early days with Jesus were amazing. We traveled a lot. The crowds were huge. And I love that. If you're going to start a revolution, you need a big crowd. And the more people you can get, the better. And that's what he was doing. The crowds were right there. And he would teach them. And then he would teach us. And every now and again he would scold us because we didn't seem to be catching on to his teachings fast enough. I saw some miraculous works. In time, all of us realized he is the chosen one. He is the Messiah. And I realized he will be the leader that's going to help us to overthrow Rome. This was it. I waited a year. I waited 2 years. Nothing. If anything, his talk became less revolutionary over time. He talked about loving your enemies. He talked about if someone's spiteful, treat them with kindness. These are not words a zealot likes to hear. And they're even an attitude that's even more difficult for a zealot to follow. These are certainly not the things that are going to help us overthrow Rome. People do not need to hear about God's grace, God's gentleness of spirit. People need action. If we're going to overthrow Rome, we need action. This wasn't the way to do it. But then it happened. One day, he said to us that we're going to Jerusalem for Passover. Yes! You know how many people would be in Jerusalem at that time? If we brought the crowds with us into Jerusalem, we picked up more people with his leadership, I would say by the end of the week, by the time Passover occurred, the Romans would be out of Jerusalem. The revolution begins now. And it started out great. When we arrived at Jerusalem, there were already crowds there, waving palm branches, singing his praises. And I'm thinking, yes, this is it. This is perfect. I saw the chief priests and the scribes. Even the high priest Caiaphas was there. You should have seen the looks on their faces. They were worried. It was beautiful. I even watched Caiaphas go over to Jesus. And I got a little concerned. I kind of inched over to hear the conversation. Caiaphas wanted him to quiet the crowds down. And I'm thinking, here's our moment. And you know what Jesus did? He said no. He said no. He told the high priest no. That's how you start a revolution. And it got better. He went into the temple and he threw out all the wicked tax collectors and money changers, and he tipped over the tables. Money flew all over the place, and he screamed and he shouted. And I thought, yes, 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 that's how you do a revolution. We're here, and I'm right here in the front lines of it with the Messiah himself. Everything was going perfectly. Everything was out. He stopped. Now, a revolution means to revolve. It means to keep going. You don't stop. When you stop, you're no longer revolting. But he just stopped. We had the momentum. We just needed to keep moving. We had that push. It's too hard to get started once you stop. There was enough money in that temple laying all over the floor. We could buy a small army. He won't let us touch a single coin. We were losing time. We were losing our advantage. I talked to him. I did. I tried to get him to understand what was happening and why we needed to keep moving forward. But he was either unable or unwilling to see the grim realities that were staring him right in the face. If something didn't happen, and it didn't happen soon, we would lose our advantage. I thought about this. I tried to consider what needed to be done. And I came up with a plan. It was a risky plan. But it was a plan that could help us to get things back on track, to get this revolution moving again. A plan that could overtake Rome. When I was a small boy, my mother used to read us stories at bedtime. There was a story she told me once of a donkey and a horse that were part of a caravan. And they loaded up the donkey and they had this huge burden on him, and there was a lot of weight, and the horse had nothing, not even a rider. And as they're going down, the donkey said to the horse, "Do you mind taking a little bit of this load? It's really heavy, just some of it." The horse looked at him and said, "Why would I do that? I have no interest in taking that. It's kind of nice to not be carrying any weight at all." They didn't go much further before the donkey fell and collapsed under the heavy load and died. The people took the load off of the donkey and they put all of it on the horse. And then they lifted up the dead carcass of the donkey and they put that on the horse as well. And now as they started to go, the horse is struggling under all this weight and thinking, if only I had agreed to take my share of the load. I knew what I had to do. I had to take my share of the load. We needed to get the revolution moving again. Jesus was carrying all of it. If I took some of that burden and let him know that we're with us, if I forced him into a corner where he would have to act, he would have to fight, the revolution will begin again. So I went to the high priests. I told them where they could find him. They gave me money. I accepted it. I took it to make everything look real. Thursday night, I led them into the Garden of Gethsemane. There were not that many guards with us. We walked down to Jesus. I embraced him. I gave him a kiss. And I stood back to watch. The revolution was about to begin again. Jesus was forced into a corner. Now he's going to have to fight. Now we overtake Rome. And they led him away. I was dumbfounded at first. It didn't make any sense. This is the Messiah. Angels from heaven could come down and be by his side. It wasn't supposed to work this way. He was supposed to fight. Today would have been the big day that maybe even gone down in history as a celebration day. We overthrew Rome. They let him away like a common criminal. History is supposed to report me as a hero, getting the revolution moving again, doing my humble small role in helping this to happen. But they took him away. And now, I'm only going to be remembered as a traitor. Someone who betrayed the Messiah. I wasn't at the cross that day. The burden that was upon me was just too heavy. It was just too much to bear. I must be rid of it.